wrecked, adrift, in death sleep, in sky cavern, a ship unfolds from deepest black. Femur masts bear all spars, lashed crosswise by glistening coils, festooned in ragged dregs of cloth that sleep and luff in silent draughts, she sails, illumined by a pale blue flame that dyes the shrouds. Aurora borealis, a solar wind aglow in death collisions of magnetic dust. Or Noctiluca scintillans, a host of tiny animals whose lantern organs light the liquid night. Scouts, drawn to your foundering pains. In the crow's nest, the vampire squid flash their photophores. Ghost crabs go barber bowling deckwards, and all that was camouflaged as wreck inhales. A swim sack full of brine, a fleshy embrace of cuttlefish and eels, disguised as slack tatters, fatten into a living interlocked rigging, propelling this vessel on dissolved wind. Billows of squid ink boil to port and starboard, swarms of ice blue pinpoint animals churn in a wake of unhinged stars. A sorcerer stands behind the fiddlehead. On his shoulder, an anglerfish casts her glowing yellow lure into the blackness, hung to reel you back from wandering the nowhere in your nothing. The sorcerer reaches with both hands to fold your wings against your chest and gathers you into his coat, into a soft nest built amongst his empty ribs. Heed the yarn, he says, but mind the toothy maw behind the watchlight. In answer, the mizzen topsail uncloaks. A giant manta kites in slow spirals downward through the forestays to offer a wide white ventral surface onto which the anglerfish aims her lure. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, projects, and then fade in through murk. The seafloor, empty, featureless. A stirring in the foreground. Clouds of sediment rise into a bed of swollen pulp, mounding, shivering into deadfall, backward into half-digested hulk. Right angles drawn in pale, lifeless crusts of brainworm and gooseneck, sea fan skeletons, a graveyard of hard reminders adhering into ship shape. A scaffold on which now burgeons an undeathing. Decks unsplinter, cracked halves of hull swing to like a closing clamshell, cohering into seamless ellipse. 2 horizontal lines appear in the debris, bulked degree by aggregating matter, until masts of bloom and algal furs lever upward into perpendicular bonds, and spars condense from drifts of silt, javelining true into perpendicular bonds, to cross trees and yards, decked out in a bunting of wilted jelly that rallies into orange anemones, violet nudibranchs, soft life hunger forth from bones. A palace of innocence, recomposed of her route reversing. Filter feeders vomiting gusts of gorge, great fish coughing chunks of fins and scales, which implode to live silvery streaks and spasm off into the choke of eel grasses, full lush, then battening down and reefing in and on, and less, until a trapped whisper, a mayday cry, appears from above. A bubble descending toward the wreck, shrinking as it speeds, to the empty throat of that lost wax lodge of bones, the sorcerer emerging from his drowning. His barren hand casting from the pocket of his seaworm-eaten coat a sodden mess congealing into tightly creased papers, from which unknots a twined garland that weaves itself through the cathead and steeves the groaning timbers of the bowsprit, and the wreck begins to lift, answering the pull of rumor, on an anchor line reeling upward. One trembling string, one spider silk, one sounding line. one thread of tail, the yarn that always dangles. We are deep shifted now, spun into the spiral of music, gone gate crashing with ravens, shuffled our coil on a death trip, stripped to a stray signal, picked up by ghost ship, rescued by death itself, who builds a nest in an empty chest and makes of us a heart. Together we mind the toothy maw, projected by the light of a lure on a manta belly, the flick in which all present company, myself included, star. Says death, our sorcerer, just as the last frame sticks and rips, and the projection on the manta's belly flips, 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 with a sound like something being wound up. A pocket watch, a music box, a windlass weighing in the bower, a bird's heart racing in a ribbed locker. With each click and beat, a glossy black feather is plucked from your body and sucked straight up his windpipe, erupting from his mouth and promptly swallowed by the waiting anglerfish, who smiles, smiles. It's all above board, Death says, watching the thing, yet trapped in the watch. Until you arrived, my windfall. He unfolds one of those crisp papers clutched in his fist, holds it so tight to his chest so you can read. When lost or unsure of your position, ships shall release a caged crow. The crow will fly straight toward the nearest land, thus giving the vessel some sort of navigational fix. Come, lend me your wings, Death says, and let's go his charts, casting himself overboard. The waves and treasures of his hold spill up toward the light, pearls worn down to grains of sand, gemstones roughing back to rocks. Glass bottles burst to living dust. A great shudder racks the strake. Tree nails feel free of the ship's planks, and the hull disintegrates in spinning trunnels. Among the dreck, his cap, his coat, his skull and two femurs form, briefly, a waving Jolly Roger. Lost from view as the ribcage sinks with you inside, every last feather tornado loose. That damned anglerfish following behind and gulping down everything. Until with a harsh shake and a push, she grasps the cage and cracks you loose, bites off each of your plucked wings, and glutted sinks slowly, a shrinking yellow glow in the undernight. What's left of the ship pitch poles and breaks apart, leaving a wake of fractured ribs, a wrecked raven, and a choice: the dangling yarn, the sinking lure.